Afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spec Talk. Today is an interesting one. I'm not gonna lie, we had to make an adjustment right at the last minute here. We were all lined up for a wonderful episode on SpecLink for owners, and as it turns out, we had to make a little adjustment at the very last minute, and that's what we do. If we are not in a profession of making adjustments, then what are we doing? Can you guys see my Spec Talk screen okay?
We can.
Excellent. All right, so let's get rolling on today's episode. So first, as always, with us today is Alex Baer, Strategic Account Executive here at RIB. Yours truly, Dory Azar, Senior Strategic Sales Specialist at RIB. And I'm going to call him Superman today. He came in at the last minute and saved the day for us, so we didn't have to cancel today's Spec Talk. So back because we love him too. I mean, Gary Christiansen is with us today as well, and we're going to talk a little bit in a second about the cool things that we're going to be talking about with Gary today. Just a reminder that if you have a project that you've done in SpecLink and would like to submit it for an award and to be showcased here on Spec Talk on a future episode, the information is on the screen. You can win a JBL speaker and a few other SpecLink prizes there. And also in the materials tab of the GoToWebinar, you'll find the information that you need in there to make a submission as well. So please, we encourage all of you, if you've ever, any project, big or small, send it in. We'd love to see it because Jacob Palin sent in this beautiful project from Dake Wells Architecture in Lawrence, and he is our winner for this week. So congratulations, Jacob, and everybody at Dake Wells Architecture. So today, what Gary is going to be, well, what we're all going to be talking about, but Gary's going to be spearheading today's episode for us, is editing sections in SpecLink. So he's going to talk to us about what you see on the screen here: best practices for moving through a section, activating content, understanding paragraph levels, viewing active-only content, editing master content, and editing user content. So it's going to be the theme of editing today, and I know nobody knows it better than Gary, so we're going to turn it over to Gary at this point and ask him to take over the screen and show us what you got on your mind today, Gary.
Excellent. Did you want to run that poll that we talked about before
Oh
here?
yeah. Oh, good. See, man,
Poll
he's a
the
great
poll.
guest and an excellent reminder guy. So before we get
I've
started
only done a
today,
few of these. It's only,
so I want to get to, oh, look at people voting already. I want to understand the audience that we've got a little bit today. So how long have you been using RIB SpecLink? So we are, look at these like equalizer bars bouncing across the screen here. Love the votes, guys. Love the participation. So we are looking at, we have all right. I think today is going to be the perfect episode for everybody who's got that 0 to 1 year experience. And if everybody else
wow,
has
that's
their
perfect.
tips and tricks, yeah, this is great information. Anybody, if you've got the 1 to 5+ years experience and you've got some tips and tricks that you want to leave us in the comment section, by all means, we're going to be keeping an eye on the Q&A and comment section. So fire away. Let's have a conversation. And if you don't currently use SpecLink, which I see all 9 of you watching you. If you want to talk about getting into SpecLink and want a personalized one-on-one demo with me or Alex or somebody from the team, by all means, reach out to either one of us. And I think we're all more than happy to connect on LinkedIn or any other way through the chat here. I'll share some email addresses with you if you need them. So I will end and share the results there, guys. That's what we got. So a good 3/4 of us are less than 5 years experience on this call today. So Gary, I don't know if that tees you up with
Oh,
how you want to drive this bus today, but
right on.
and we will try not to talk hockey today. Gary and we duked it out a little bit before we went live. We're going to try to keep it. Maybe we could talk Super Bowl. I don't know. Keep it trendy, but failing that, let's get into editing specs and SpecLink.
Excellent. Well, it's the perfect segue to see that people are really in that, 0 to 1 or 0 to 2 years into SpecLink. So for those that have been using SpecLink for a while, this may seem like a little bit of a refresher. I have to tell you honestly, I do a lot of foundational training, and I keep seeing this come back. It's okay. Well, we didn't understand this from the beginning, type of thing. And even with a lot of the enterprise clients that I work with, or I mean, from the one person shop to the full on specification departments, it these things will more than anything, I think they'll dispel some myths. I think there's a couple of things I can help with that might save you a couple of extra minutes as you're going through this. You might be doing things twice. I've seen it happen too often. But I think what Dory mentioned earlier, the real win for today is your reaction to some of these things and saying, I don't do it that way, or we do it this way. Is this better, or that type of thing? Anything that you want to share as far as your own tips or tricks, I got to tell you, it's one of those community-based things that really makes a difference for people. We've had people at a number of shows recently, like the Master Specifiers Retreat, and I guess there was a lot of really good feedback about the webinars that we do, this presentation, and the amount of information that you can get. So little bit back to basics today, I would say. I want to walk you through the best practices for moving through a section, sequence numbers and levels. Those two things I've watched unlock SpecLink for people. We get into that, and once you really understand how those two things connect to each other, SpecLink kind of opens up, and everything becomes a lot faster. And again, the better you do those things, the faster those things come along. Every time, and we talked about this with the last Spec Talk, every time you update your Office Master, or you have a best practice for activating content as you go through, it makes every single project just that much faster. So it's a huge deal. So we want to go through those things. The view only, the view active only. There's a few different places I want to show you that, and then we'll get into the real actual. I'm going to click in and start editing and making changes. And there are some questions that come up every time about that. The RIB content versus your user content. And there's a couple of different versions of that. So I want to be clear as we move through that. But first and foremost, you guys know me by now, I'm sure. I'm always going to point you to the guide. The most information you can get about SpecLink is on the guide. So how do we get to the guide? Same scenario. Gary's learning how to use PowerPoint all over again. From here, you guys can see my SpecLink screen. It's telling me you can see that. Excellent. Give me a thumbs up, Dory, if you guys can see SpecLink, just to be sure. Excellent. All right. So to get to the guide, question mark in the upper right corner, it's going to be here on every screen. Every screen of SpecLink is going to allow you to get to that question mark, open the guide. The guide's going to open in its own tab. And again, Holly Jordan makes this comment all the time. This is her favorite thing I've ever shown her, which I find very funny. But if I slide that over, now I have all of this information. 140 articles, 80 something videos all together. There's a lot of content here. And one of the things that I always point out is the online SpecLink Cloud events. So monthly, we do an hour-long session on Tuesday and then a 3-hour session on the Wednesday. They are next week. The February versions are next week. Come right here, and you can sign up for the live versions. Alex Fulton will run those, our training specialist. And you can even access the brand new updated on-demand versions too. They're recordings of January's monthly webinars. So those are all updated. The information to get to the Spec Talks and the Spec Talk library is in there, and the new foundations course that we're doing. That's a paid for training, but we're trying to do that once a month now as well. All of that information is there. So the guide's a really big deal. Always point everybody to the guide for sure. When we get into our content for today, we want to talk about some data basics. So when I open an RIB master section for the first time in a project, it's going to look like this, unless I've activated it from the sections list, and we're going to talk about that briefly. But if I just clicked on the name, concrete reinforcing, from my sections list, it would show up like this. It would be all gray. And, in general, you would see the sequence numbers would be all gray. This is inactive content. It's not going to print. So when we talk about activating something, we're talking about either setting it up to print or telling it, okay, yes, I want you to print, that type of thing. What's interesting and probably a tiny bit confusing for some people is, I know it was for me immediately as I was learning this, and I had so many people walk me through this in so many different ways. But at this point, master content isn't editable. In fact, the RIB master content is not editable. You cannot change the actual master content. what you're going to do is make your edits and selections, and that becomes your project. So it's kind of like putting a piece of tracing paper between the master content and then pulling through the things just you want. All right, so the sequence numbers are going to indicate the paragraph status. Is it active? Is it going to print? That type of thing. Why is it like that? So that's the difference between why something might be a white sequence number with the blue background or a black sequence number with the white background, that type of thing. We'll get into those in a little more detail. Let's step one step back and talk about activating sections. So if I'm in my sections list of a project, so I'll come and click on my Plymouth North Middle School project I created a little earlier today. And let's say I wanted to go in, first of all, I just wanted to see what was active. What's already active in this project? Which sections have I said, hey, I want you to be part of my project? You can use this pull down menu, this filter, and choose active sections. And now it's going to take a second because there's 1,200 plus sections to go through, but it's going to show me all of the sections that I've already activated. That doesn't mean these are completely edited. It just means that I've told the system, I want these things to be part of my project. All right, so that's what the blue check boxes are. If I come back to show me all sections, all right, well, now I'm going to go down into Division 3 and concrete reinforcing, and now I'm looking at the concrete reinforcing section. So I can click on that selection box. I've now activated the section. All right, well, what does that mean? There's a couple of different ways to access the section too. I think everybody knows this, but you can click on the name of the section. All right, this is not my favorite. This is not what I would call a best practice, but I know people like to do this, especially if they're going in and making a quick change. Oop, oh, that was interesting. I had a little computer anomaly here. Hang tight for 1 second. Things are taking over my screen. There we go.
You're only supposed to have one cursor, Gary.
Sorry,
if you see more than one cursor, maybe
right.
Consult a physician. Yeah.
All of a sudden, Teams decided to restart over on the side, and it was like, hey, I'm here. I'm like, oh, you stop. You go away. So if I click on the name of the section, it's going to take over this tab of my browser. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. So what I normally show people to do is to right-click on the name and choose to open in a new tab. I think the reason I think that's such a big deal is that here on the web, if I make any changes to this, I want to make sure that I go back properly. What we see is people close this tab, and in a sense, the system has, lots of tools to say, okay, that's saved and that person is logged out. But depending on the version of your browser, sometimes that doesn't, all those connections aren't quite there. So you end up locking a section up. We don't want to do that. So a best practice, very simply, is to come back, click on the name of the project. You're back in the sections list, so you've closed the section appropriately. And then if I click on projects, I've closed the project appropriately. Pretty simple. Now, if I go down back to concrete reinforcing, I can right-click. This is what a lot of people are doing. This is something that came about very early on in SpecLink, but I like to make sure everybody knows you can do this. If I click open in a new tab, I now still have my sections list here to work in, and I have my section here waiting for me. Okay, so if I click back to my sections list, because I clicked the selection box here, I clicked the checkbox. That's how I activated this section. When I go into concrete reinforcing, sequence 0 is already on. All right, so that's another way to activate a section. Let's show you that. If I come down to openings and go down into skylights, one of my favorite sections, I can right click. I'm not going to use the checkbox. I'm going to right click and open in a new tab. And here you'll notice I've got concrete reinforcing and skylights and my sections list. So I have a lot going on my screen here, and I can reorder these things however I want, but I'm all in the same project. Now, in order to activate this section, it's the same as clicking the checkbox on the sections list. I can click sequence 0. I click sequence 0, which is the section title, and that will activate this section in my sections list. Again, something that I've noticed, and this comes from, I think, generations too. I know it took me a while to move from working on installed software into working on the web, and 99% now of everything I do is done on the web. So one thing I would point out, go back to your sections list and make sure you refresh the browser tab. It's just part of working online. It's a good habit to be in is, okay, refresh that browser tab. And now at any time, I can look at just the active sections and I'll have all the sections that I know are active in my project, including concrete reinforcing and the unit skylights. All right. So now that I'm in my unit skylight section, we can talk about activating paragraphs, but a couple of things I want to talk about. Now, I can activate paragraphs just by clicking on the sequence numbers, right? That's how it's usually done, okay? But you and I both know there's links, and that's why these light green and the dark green are there. Those are all about linking. So you can actually look through and you can see, okay, part 2 is already on. That's interesting. Part 2 is active. So how would I know that? How would I immediately find out what's active? I haven't done anything except activated the section, but what paragraphs are going to print? All right. There's a
Gary,
toggle here. Go ahead. Yep.
can I
Yep.
jump in and just clarify? There's a question that came up that's relevant
Interrupt
to
me
what
at
you're
will.
saying.
Yep.
Don is asking to clarify, if you right click to open a section in a new tab, you
Yep.
will not lock up the section by mistake?
Well, that's you as long as you close, you can now close this tab. It's exactly where we're going. So if all changes are saved and you close this tab, you're not going to lock that section up because the project is still open over here. That's exactly right. That's a great way to put it. Yep.
Okay. Excellent.
Yep.
Thanks, Gary.
Excellent. You got it. You got it. So we're going to come back to activating paragraphs, but it really is about being able to click on the sequence numbers. I'm going to show you a helpful tip there, hopefully too, but normal versus active. So this is a way to see at any time, you've got this toggle right up here in the toolbar. I can go from normal to active. And now immediately I can see all of the things that are active. Well, because the only thing I've clicked on is sequence 0, well, that means all of these things would have to have been done by links, right? So these are simple paragraph links that are coming from sequence 0 or the paragraph levels, okay? So, and that's the way links normally work. Skylights is probably a link coming from part 2 products because that's a level 1 going to a level 2 type of thing. Most links are done by level. We'll get into levels a little bit more detail in a moment. All right. But this is kind of an interesting way to look at this. So active and normal, very, very helpful. Something that if you don't know about, I guarantee you'll start using. It's something that I've heard over and over and over again from people. We didn't think it was that big a deal until we started, kind of looking around at it now. Some people have actually referred to it as print preview without the preview. So basically, instead of having to worry about the look and feel of the section, Active View tells you what content is going to print, is what it comes down to. All right. But really interesting, when I look at Active View, I see that it's part 2 products. I don't have part 1. I don't have part 3. In fact, what most people that I've worked with now for 7 years this would keep them up at night is part 2 products is 1.01. Okay. That's something that I've had to actually, people stand up in a class and say, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if you left that alone. So this is where we get into the section automation and how most sections are automatically linked. And when I say most, I mean probably 98% of our sections work this exact same way. Now, there's always the exception that proves the rule. Demolition in Division 2 is something that doesn't have any Part 2 at all. So it says Part 2 not used, and Part 3 is turned on automatically. All right. So, and I've gone over this a million times with people. I just really think it's a huge deal to understand when you're first using SpecLink, or maybe you missed it as you started to learn it. But Part 1 General is normally going to have a yellow link, which is suggested for review. We think it's pretty important. You're very likely going to use Part 1. That makes a lot of sense. But we leave it to you to turn on and work through Part 1. Part 2 is where you would normally start. That's the best practice from the Construction Specifications Institute. When you're moving through a specification, you go to Part 2 products, move through your products, and then go through your Part 3 execution, which again, we leave as a yellow link as suggested for review, and then you would go back up to Part 1. I think it's a super smart thing, the way the database is built, because we follow that path, but help a lot with that. And what I mean by that is this. If I go back to normal view, what you'll notice is there's already these green links just waiting from a hierarchy, from a paragraph level standpoint. These are just waiting to be active. Reference standards, section includes, might even be a submittal. Yep. So these are links that are coming from part 2 or 3. In this case, we know it's part 2 because it's only part 2 content that's actually active. So that in itself is speeding this process up for you. It's automatically, it's intelligently linking those things to say, well, if these things are on down here, they should be on back up in part 1. The great example really is the reference standards. We know that the AAMAWDMACSA, I won't keep going, that is actually selected somewhere. There's a link here, down here, that is on. And if I go through, I'm going to find it right here. It's paragraph 78 that has the grade on it. All right. So there's so much automation that's happening that's making this faster for you. But again, people are going to see 1.01 skylights and say, I can't, it does not compute for me. So here's the tip or trick that I have been telling people for a while. You know you're going to use part 1 anyway. Click sequence number 2 or wherever part 1 general is going to be right up there anyway, unless there's a section checklist. And then you can see all of the numbers will align themselves very quickly. But again, CSI best practice, dive into part 2 and start activating, right? So this is an important thing. And again, it's kind of like last time, I'll make these slides available. I'll send them over to marketing so they can wrap these up for you and get these sent out. But this is something that I find eludes people at the beginning. The whole database into your project and what the difference there is, and the section automation. Again, unless there is some kind of checklist or some reason why part 1 would be green or part 3 would be green. This is, like I say, about 98% of the over 1,270 sections that are inside SpecLink right now. So part 1 goes to that suggested for review. Part 2 goes on. It's automatically activated. Part 3, again, suggested for review. You go through and click, and then end of section. The last paragraph in every section is automatically activated for you. Again, one thing you just don't have to think about. All right. Questions, comments, feelings, emotions?
The questions
I
are
feel better now that the part 1 selected the first one.
Alex is going to sleep better tonight. Yep.
I don't like that skip word either.
I'll know if you're ever mad at me, Alex, if you share a spec with me that's got the numbering all messed up.
Right.
And I'll know, like, if you ever upset me, the first thing I'm doing is just sending you a spec with the numbering.
And I won't care for it.
Well, then let's stay cool with each other, and maybe we won't have to cross that bridge.
We won't have to cross the line.
There are a bunch of questions coming in, but I'm going to see if I can jump in and ask you a specific one that Nicholas had asked, saying, is it possible to have our internal specs not mark everything as in user defined? It seems like only RIB masters are ever marked as master content.
Right. Yeah. So right now, user content is whether it's something that you imported from a Word document or what I'm going to show in a minute where we're adding content to this. Those are going to be labeled as use in this origin column so that you can tell the difference. But nobody sees that. So the only people that would ever see that is somebody you're inviting in to work in SpecLink with you. So that you for user content is not going to translate into any kind of printing or exporting. You could say, give me an all text draft and show all the choice fields. I mean, there's so many printing options, it's unreal, but that U still isn't going to show up. The sequence numbers don't show up. The color coding doesn't show up. None of that shows up. So the U is going to be there so that you can identify user content versus the master content. Yep.
Okay, the legendary Eric Ledbetter also suggested a tip here. He said, when we were back talking about the numbers, he said, if you change the format to a format called Bach format, it won't print the numbers.
Block. Did you say block?
It's probably what that is meant to say. Yes.
Okay, so that's true if you don't want numbers at all. You can do that. This is one thing that we talked about. I actually updated, just so everybody knows, the videos for the and the articles for the predefined and the customizing these templates have been completely updated. So again, take a look at those in the guide. Just did them over the last couple of days. So if I applied that to the section, the 1.01, now you don't have any numbers at all. But that's totally up to you. I don't see too many people using that in the scenario where you don't have any numbers. So that's totally up to you. Then again, if Eric says it, I'm pretty sure it's probably something that's happening, because Eric's one of the 6 or 7 people that if he says so, I'm good with that. Yeah.
I would say there's a caveat of folks that you're using the sheet spec capabilities that maybe want a little bit more like as opposed to the outline, maybe the short form of the full length. You can put it on that block format, put it on the sheet specs, and then it still stays in that conventional format of no letters, numbers.
And that's what Eric just said. He said it's a cheat code to look like an outline spec. Which an outline spec is what you would use for a sheet spec. This is all coming together.
Exactly.
Guys. This is fantastic.
Yep.
Why don't you dive into the next thing there, Gary, and then we'll do another poll question after that.
Perfect. So we can move through. I want to dive into these. I want to dive into the color codings. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure we were really clear on today is how to move through a section. And what you've watched me do so far is this, scrolling up and down. And you're going to get to a point, like I say, you start with part 2. That's a best practice. Now, I'm a little disappointed Holly's not on the call. She might be on the text, but Holly, she's, and I'm sure a lot of people do it this way. Holly starts at part 1 and moves her way through. System doesn't stop you from doing that at all. It's just meant to help with the automation for part 1. So if you want to start at part 1 and click things on and keep going, that's totally up to you. It does not stop you at all from doing that. You may duplicate some work. That's all. Okay. It doesn't stop anything.
Gary, while you're teeing up the color coding here, we got a question about the color coding. If you could roll into the next part that you're talking about.
Sure.
The question is from Scott asking, what's the difference between light green link bars and dark green?
Yeah, great. So this is a great example in things that are going to come together for us. If I was to look at these 2 light green bars, these 2 paragraphs cannot be active right now. Anybody guess? Let's see in the chat and in the questions. Somebody say why. Why can't I activate either one of these right now? I could try to click on it, and I'm going to get a blue dot, right?
You're going to load up the comment section now with whys. It's all going to be why. But Gary, why? Why can't we activate that? I'll just.
So this all goes back to levels. Something we're going to talk about in just a bit, but the levels are the hierarchy of SpecLink. So if I put my cursor over sequence 0, this is the only level 0 paragraph, your section title, unit skylights in this case. If I look down at part 1, that's a level 1 paragraph. These are part 1, part 2, part 3, end of section. Those are your level 1 paragraphs. And again, you can see that right up here. All right. If I look at section includes, that's your level 2, or known as articles in the specifications, page format, section format. So from here, if I don't have my level 2 active, I can't activate levels 3, 4, 5, 6. You can't be out of level. It can't be out of hierarchy. All right. Basically, what this is trying to tell you is, if I even tried to turn on this particular paragraph, even though there's a link there, this is a scenario where it's I want to go out and play, but my parent is telling me I can't. Okay, so just things to keep in mind. We're going to talk a little bit more about levels momentarily. When we talk about moving through a section, 2 things I really want to point out. When I click somewhere, and this is a great example. If I click on submittals, I know for a fact grade substantiation is going to turn on for me because it has that green link. It wouldn't have that if it was out of level. So if I click submittals, now grade substantiation turns on, and its children that it now has links to go on, it turns on. So I tell people, click to activate a paragraph and then give the system a second to see if there's any linking coming from that. A lot of times you can look up at the selection queue. All right. And the faster your internet, the faster the system works. It's kind of the way it works. So if I come down to quality assurance, I don't have anything that turns on. If I turn on warranty, I get C section 017800. So give that a second when you make a click to see if there's any linking that happens. So it's one thing about moving through the section that I would say, click, especially if you're clicking on levels 2 or 3, that type of thing, give the system a second to see if anything else turns on. But I don't want to scroll. If I know I want to get down to part 3, sure, this isn't a very big section. I could probably scroll down quickly. But I think this is probably one of the most welcome new features of the system, which is the document map. I feel like down the road, this may move around a little bit or be a little more flexible for where it stands inside the system. But if you come over to the document manager, just remember document. So I'm going to go to the document manager to find the document map. And now what you get is basically an outline of all the part 1, all the level 1s and level 2s. So if I wanted to go right down to part 3 execution, it'll roll me right down to there. If I wanted to go to installation, it'll bring me down. It'll make sure I can see it on the screen. All right. So if I click on part 3 execution, once I learn how to click my mouse, if I click 139, I can take a look and see all the things that have turned on. All right. So that's 3.01 installation. Okay. Well, what if I click on examination? Okay. Well, A and B turn on. So I'm giving the site a second to figure out, okay, these are links. This is stuff that's making this a little bit faster. All right. If under installation I want 0147, I get install unit skylights in accordance with ASTM E2112. For any Rush fans out there, if I scroll back up into reference standards, I'm going to find E2112 has already been activated. That's one of the things. If you had gone through the reference standards and chosen the one that you, or chosen the ones that you want, and then you find yourself doing the same thing later on, this work is already done for you. That linking is already part of the system. So the document map lets you move very quickly through the system or through the section. That's something people have been asking for a while. So remember that document map is in the document manager. All right, let's dive into these color codings of the sequence numbers. All right. Something that nobody asked for. Anybody ask, Dory? So I can't see the questions panel for everybody that's online. So has anybody asked about update notes? Has anybody asked at all about that? It's normally a sequence 1 of the section.
I haven't seen them, Alex.
Okay.
I haven't seen a question like that.
Perfect. Excellent. So the reason I ask is if I go back up to the top and I'm looking at, okay, I've got my level 0, my sequence 0 as well. And then paragraph number 1, sequence 1 is update notes. And you're going to notice that it's kind of this is the exception that proves the rule when it comes to the linking and the color coding. So very rarely will you see a light gray sequence number with a dark green bar. All right. This is the way the system works to say this is a non-selectable, non-printing paragraph. This is here specifically for you to read the notes for this section. So it can tell you when things were updated and how this section has come about. All right. So that's a pretty important thing. Every section should have an update notes. But the reason it has these little gray dots is, again, it's non-selectable and non-printing. Those are tags. So if you've watched Eric Ledbetter's SpecTalk, he talked a lot about tags. Beth Stroshain talked about tags. So those are the NS and the NP tag have been applied to update notes. So they're not going to print out unless you do an all text draft, and then you'll see update notes. But you'll see that the reason that's like that is to make sure the numbering stays right. So that part 1 general is a level 1, keeps the levels in hierarchy. All right. So light gray sequence numbers don't print. I can't even tell you in the last 7 years how many times I've said that sentence. Light gray sequence numbers. It doesn't matter if they've got the little dots because they're non-printing or non-selectable. It doesn't matter if they have this blue dot. Okay, and the blue dot is the number 1 question I get. All right, so we're going to get into that in just a second. But the light gray sequence numbers, again, doesn't matter any of the other attributes. Light gray sequence numbers don't print. Okay, they are inactive. They are not active paragraphs for printing. All right, so you can still do an all text draft and get all those to print out. In your finals, they are not going to print. All right, so the black font will normally have a green bar. Those two things kind of go hand in hand in a way. That is a paragraph that has been activated by linking. So if I'm looking at my section, I can see all of these light gray sequence numbers. Again, doesn't matter if they're yellow or green on the side, doesn't matter if they've got a blue dot or the little tiny gray dots. Light gray sequence numbers don't print. But we know that we selected a paragraph down in part 3 that has the ASTM E2112. That's why this paragraph is turned on. There is a link saying, oh no, we need that now. So it's turned this on automatically. Same here, this grade substantiation turned on, evidence of all of these different certifications. Okay, they are paragraph links turning these things on automatically. All right, a white number with the blue box means a user clicked those things on. All right, so if I come down and I say I want, first of all, I want manufacturers, and let's say I go to unit skylights, and then just so that we're not playing favorites, I'm going to turn every one of these on. I'm going to click each one of these so that we're specifying all of these. I'm sure somebody is just saying we'd never do that, which is probably pretty true. All right. And I'll do substitutions just to throw everybody else off too. But if I decided to say dual sash operable sloped roof window skylights, I love these FACRO windows. These are great. I want those. If I click on 65, I get a blue dot. Alex, why do we get a blue dot?
Need that parent paragraph.
Need the parent paragraph. So this paragraph here is a level 3. And if you ever wonder, scroll up just enough so you can see dual sash operable. That's a level 3. I can put my cursor over the sequence number or anywhere over the text. That's a level 3 paragraph. FACRO America is a level 4 paragraph. I can't activate that. This parent is saying you can't go out and play. If I now click paragraph 64, that turns them both on. All right. The other thing I will point out as we move through this, not to take up too much time, but if you click on the notes for something like this, there are some of these manufacturers who have done a phenomenal job. Our team, Evan and Lauren, there's a whole bunch of people involved in this, but you have so much product information inside SpecLink. I don't think a lot of people realize how much updated product information is in here. CEUs, lunch and learns, contact information. There's just a ton of information. I've had to actually hide this from my wife when she pops in and I'm working because I don't want her to see these because I know what would happen if she saw that window. So I'll get in trouble for that.
People are using those note sections too for their own internal ideas and thoughts, right? Like, hey, if it's this kind of project, use this one. If it's that kind of project, use that one.
Exactly.
And just tracking things that way.
Yeah, we could do a whole SpecTalk on the difference between notes and comments. I could talk for an hour on those. I know it's a big shocker to everybody, but I could talk for an hour.
Gary, talk for an hour? No way.
Right. Sorry.
Gary, do you have access to the Q&A?
I don't believe.
Are you able to? Okay, because Eric had a really interesting question, but at this exact moment, I want to just ask people, we are doing a digital global event here at RIB software overall, but it is going to feature SpecLink in it as well. And I'd love to invite you guys to register for the global event. There's 2 showings of it. It's on Thursday, February 13th. If you go into the chat, you can register for free there. I proudly hosted it, but we do a lot of interviews, a lot of discussion panels about all things construction industry, and it's extremely global. We were talking to contractors from Europe, from Australia, spec writers from the United States. It's going to be about 2.5 hours of just really good free knowledge and people sharing their insights, kind of the future of the industry. So if you're kind of into the tech side or how things are evolving from a software and performance perspective, you definitely want to check out the link that I just posted in the chat and give it a click, register, and see you there. And then come back after and tell me that I had like something stuck in my teeth for the whole time that nobody wanted to tell me about, but would love to get your feedback on that afterwards as well. And we do have a poll, so I just want to ask, sorry, I'm falling behind on that one. If anybody has, just take a quick look and let me know if you have or have not signed up for that, because yeah, it's cool. There's a few different RIB softwares that are going to be showcased, but one of the SpecLink segment is going to be an interview between myself and Amy Baker, architect. It's going to be fantastic. She's got such brilliant ideas on how she uses the platform. She's running a medium-sized spec writing consulting firm, so she's always never shy to share her knowledge and definitely don't want to miss the opportunity to capitalize on what she is willing to share. So just a quick view there. We see we've got a few people signed up already. And if I did my math, I know 8 divides by 64. So I'd say about an eighth of you are registered and or not. So thank you, Gary. I just wanted to check in on the RIB registration there.
Right on, right on. So I did see a couple of questions. I can get to the questions panel. I don't know what level of user I am on this, but I will say there's one thing I wanted to point out. The document manager is right over here under the, the document map. I do that all the time. Is here under the document manager. And yes, a couple of people made comments. I've asked our development team to look at this, to move this, because I feel kind of like people have said that it's a little bit hidden. I feel like this is something that could be more useful up in almost a panel that comes up very quickly, that type of thing. And there was one other great question about the document map. If I go to active view and open the document map, it only gives me, it actually updates to what view you're in. Here's another good example of that. I'll close it down. I'll go back to normal view, and then this will be a different session, but full spec, outline view, short form view. If I turn around and say, hey, just show me outline view, all right, and then I look at the document manager and the document map, it does, it keeps up with what you're clicking on. So again, that's a very powerful piece of this. I feel like this was, again, a very welcome new addition, but they really took their time to make sure this was right. I would like to see it maybe move to a little more easily accessible area. So one last thing I wanna finish off with the sequence numbers, with the color coding of the sequence numbers. Something that comes up a bit as I get back into full spec view is somebody goes in, they look at a section and they say, okay, well, they turned all these things on for me, and that's great. But what if I wasn't gonna specify performance requirements? That's probably kind of nutty, but it's possible. You could say, hey, I'm not responsible for this. We're not going to do the performance requirements, but we've already turned it on. How do you turn it off, right? So you right click. If there's a link that's already turning something on, you right click and exclude and ignore the links. And then everything underneath that parent will turn off. All right. And then if you want to revert that, you simply right click and change the option. You unclick it, deselect it, if you will, and then everything will come back on the way it was before. All right, so that's what the red strike through is I'm looking at a section or a paragraph or a branch of paragraphs. Most of the time it's used on linking that the master content is turned on. And that's great. However, I've actually seen some people say, okay, well, we don't ever specify design criteria. This is more for your masters type of thing, but this is a great indicator to say, we don't do this. You could actually just exclude and ignore the links on that. And that means that nothing in that section, you're actually giving your team a message that way. So it's just one more way to relate information to your team. We don't do the design criteria on this type of thing. All right. We've gone over levels quite a bit, but I do want to just highlight the level bar at the top and really the parentage. I can't activate a level 4 if its parent level 3 isn't active. And I've had a few people say, but the paragraph above it is active, or something along those lines. It's not always necessarily the paragraph above it. Okay, if I'm looking at double glazing and I want ultraviolet, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down. If I try to click on 106, it's not going to turn on, and it's not because visible light. It's because of this double glazing option. This 101 isn't on. I find the CSI format's easy to see the indents. That's up to you. So if I click double glazing, then 106 is going to turn on as well. All right. And now we get into basic editing. So all we've done so far is activate RIB master content. We've turned things on, turned things off, looked at ways to move around, color coding of sequence numbers, paragraph levels. I still think those two things are they're the things that kind of unlock SpecLink for people. I've seen it happen over and over again. But if I want to do some editing, I can go in and click and type whatever I want, right? So if I came in here and I said, okay, skylights, factory assembled glazing and aluminum frame, I don't want free of visual distortion, but I want it weather tight. So I just backspace over it. Okay, that's simple. All right. So when I do that, this origin column over here is going to light up with an M with an asterisk. So we modify a paragraph. We make a change to a paragraph. That could be populate a fill in the blank, change a choice field, anything along those lines, add a reference standard into it, whatever it might be. Any modification of a paragraph, even something as simple as adding text or backing over text, that type of thing, it's going to give you that M with the asterisk in the origin column. By the way, these are the only three things you will see in the origin column, right? The M with the asterisk, an M by itself, or the U. Let's make sure we're clear on those things. So an M with an asterisk is going to display when you've made a modification to a paragraph, like I backspaced over that content. Well, it actually means I have two versions of every paragraph because I can click on that M with the asterisk goes away, and the free of visual distortion comes back. I've now reverted this or toggled this back to RIB master content. Okay, pretty simple. Okay, I can have my version, which is the version that would have the asterisk, all right, or I can have the master version, all right. Now, the reason why every single paragraph doesn't have the M is because there's no user version of these paragraphs. So there's no reason to do that, all right. So keep that in mind, all right. So if I wanted to delete my edit, right? So my edit was to backspace over free of visual distortion. So I need to see the edited version. So I need to make sure I'm looking at the M with the asterisk. All right. And then I can right click anywhere, but I'm going to avoid the choice field. I'm going to right click anywhere in that text, and I have the delete user modifications. It's going to ask me if I'm sure, and I'm going to say yes. And now the M with the asterisk is going to go away completely, and I'm back to that master content. Okay.
Gary, I think that's a good one too, because in word processing you've got undo, of course, but that's only going to undo the most recent paragraph, right? So I tell people this is kind of like a local undo memory for every single line in the entire database.
Yeah, an undo won't necessarily change an edited paragraph. So Control Z and undo, that type of thing. Those are for, if you indent a paragraph or something like that, that's great for undo. I would make sure, this is just one of those things working in a database, I would make sure that you're using that origin column type of thing. All right. If I wanted to add a new paragraph into this branch, if I thought to myself, all right, well, I've got the shape and the glazing and the operation. What if I just wanted to add a paragraph for color? I wanted to specify a particular color for the skylight. I could come to the end of the paragraph above where I want the new paragraph to be and simply hit enter. And now I have a new user paragraph. And the people mention this. Okay, so people asking about how to add notes too. That's good. This is how you add a user paragraph. And I say color. And then maybe I build a choice field, and put a list of colors in to do that type of thing. All right. But I would want to then activate that paragraph and turn that on. All right. So again, I do have the ability to right click and delete the user paragraph. Remember though, this is kind of the basis of the database. I'm not going to delete master content. There's no deleting. It's simply deactivating. I don't want these particular manufacturers maybe, and we'll just choose a bunch of them so we stay true. So then I don't want substitutions or whatever. Okay. So I can deselect. So now those aren't going to print, or I can add them back in anytime I want. All right. So that's kind of the deal when it comes to master content. It's always going to be here. Okay.
Gary, we've got a question that might tie into what you're talking about here. Excuse me. Carolyn's asking about adding several consecutive lines of text, perhaps from a Word document or something that involves copying and pasting.
Yep, you can absolutely do that. If you copy content from a Word document, you can paste it in. There's a couple of different ways to do that. I would need to get a Word document open. So if I was going to, a couple of different ways to look at it. If I wanted to add a paragraph here and I had content, I can say I can copy this, copy paragraph, and then I could paste the paragraph or paste the paragraph with links. So the right click is the best way to do that here. But I believe if you do from a Word document into this content, you can do a Control C and Control V. I'm going to cheat a little bit and do this while you all are watching, which I try not to do too often, but that's not as helpful as we hoped. Let's do this. Let's see what happens if I do that. Nope. All right. Just for fun. See how close I came to the Boston accent right there? Just for fun.
You were right at the edge, Gary.
Really close. Yep.
Yep.
So I'm copying. I pasted that content into this little hidden Word document that no one can see. It's all magic. If I say Control C and I come down, let's see if I do. Instead of doing that, let's see if I do Control V. Yeah. So I just Control C'd out of the Word document and Control V'd into SpecLink. Yeah, but remember, at that point, you're probably going to have to mess with the levels a little bit. So I might right-click and increase the indent. So there's a few different ways to do that. And yes, I just did update the article and video for this too. So be aware of that. There's an increase and decrease paragraphs here. So I can increase or decrease either the whole branch or the one paragraph. If I increase that branch, okay, let's say I come down here and I'm looking at shading coefficient and I right click, increase indent. Okay, that's great. That makes that a level 6. Okay, if I right click again, I don't get increase. I can't break the hierarchy. I can't go from a level 5 to a level 7. It doesn't work that way. You got to stay in the hierarchy, in the parentage. And just to answer that real quick, in order to create your own user note, go to the sequence manager, click on notes, and click add a note. Another way you can do that is to write from the notes. Let's see, you got the notes and the origin. All right, so you definitely want to do it that way. Go to the sequence manager, click on notes, and then simply add a note. And then you can drag and drop the sequence number over, watch the article, read the article, watch the video. Very, very easy to do. Put your own notes in there.
Gary, we got 2 comments.
Yep.
We got 2 comments related to what you were doing with pasting the information about the location of your cursor matters when you're copying and pasting.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So be aware. Like unless you're going to spend a lot of time like I did messing around with the levels, put yourself in the right place in the section to paste in. That's a very good
Meaning
point.
left to right? Also like whatever. Okay.
Yep.
I see.
Right on.
Okay, cool. Yep. Cool. Great questions today. Tons of questions today.
I had a feeling. Yep.
Well, people just want to know what Gary's thinking. You know, that's it. This is
that's scared. Don't go there. So when it comes to editing content, even just the simple change of a choice field, we say we want bronze tinted transparent. That makes that a master modified paragraph. I can click that to turn it back to transparent. Either way, again, the origin column isn't something anybody else sees, but it's a good indicator for you as you're moving through your section. You know, obviously, if you share the project with somebody and they're working in SpecLink, they are going to see those things, and that's a great thing. There's always been this concept of giving the users that middle level and saying, hey, let you create your own version of the database type of thing. I think that's far off, but I think that again just gives us something more to reach for.
Fantastic. There's a quick question that came in here. I think we know the simple answer to this, but Carolyn is asking if SpecLink has a preferred browser.
I always tell everybody an updated HTML5 browser. So Chrome, Edge, Firefox. If you're working a Mac, Safari's fine. But we do see it's one of the reasons why it's a main slide on our presentations with the sport information, simply because we still do run into people using Windows Explorer or Internet Explorer, I should say, because there are still people that can get to that with the lowercase e, no matter how big it is. But that browser has been sunsetted a long time ago. Yep.
Okay, so what was it? HTML5?
Yeah. Any updated HTML5 browser. So 90% of the world uses Chrome or Edge or Firefox. Those are the ones you want to stick with. You know, I know there's a whole bunch of them out there, and you know, if you're seeing weird stuff, that could be why. Always just try another one. I mean, I honestly, I think we've got 6 or 7 computers in this house with the, you know, with everyone that's here, and I don't know of one of them that doesn't have at least 3 different browsers on it. So you can always test it if there's something else. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
this bank likes that browser, that thing likes that browser. I get
Yeah,
that.
and you know, a lot of it I do for testing. You know, I have a lot of them just for testing. Does this audio software work better through that or that type of
Yeah,
thing? So
yeah.
right on. Yep,
They've all
yep,
got their preferences.
right
Eric
on.
Ledbetter is asking, I think, a funny question here. He says, now try to delete sequence 105. And I'm not sure what happened at sequence 105. I was probably busy reading some comments here.
Yeah, so this is a great example. So when I put this in, it became the parent to these paragraphs. So again, that's something you have to be very, very careful with. If I try to delete this paragraph, it's going to say, hey, I'm going to take all those with me. Okay. This, if they were user paragraphs, they would go with them. Here, even if they're modified paragraph, it's not going to take it. The message is pretty clear. The paragraphs includes one or more master sub paragraphs. Only the selected paragraph will be deleted. So now it's actually not going to let you do it. So I've got to fix the levels here first. So I would need to decrease that branch indent. And let's see what happens if we delete that. There we go. The tough one with that test was that it's the same content from this paragraph, Eric. So
I think Eric, there was an LOL at the end of it, so I think he was setting us up for something.
oh yeah, he was
Gary,
trying. He was trying. Yep.
Gary, I
Gary, I
hate
have
to
a
be the time.
question based
Oh,
on one that I'm kind of curious about. This one's from Robert Bruce over at PBK. Hey, Robert, hope you're doing well over there. So he's just curious. This is a little bit adjacent to, or not adjacent to exactly what we've been discussing, but he's asking about the notes.
Yep.
He said that he's putting notes in to help designers see the product information, but he's found
Yep.
out that those that are with a license could see the notes, but I guess those that are only given comment review access aren't able to see the notes. Is that something that we're aware of, or
Yeah, they should test that again. Because I know there have been updates to that in just the last couple of updates and even a hotfix. So test that again, and if you're still running into that, and I'll actually test that this afternoon now that you say that, because I think I have a way to test that. If you still see that, let's support no, just so that we know that, and either add it to the, the documentation or put that in as a bug that needs to get fixed.
guys,
Perfect.
I hate to be the time police, but we are down to the 2-minute warning. There, I brought a football reference into it just before Super Bowl Sunday. This is fantastic. So good for me. That's my big accomplishment of the day. So I'm just going to share my
You
screen
got to
here.
have something, Dory. You got to shoot for the stars, you know.
You know what? Something's going to stick. So it's these little victories that make the day
Yes,
really,
sir.
really special here. So let me get up to our final slides here and just remind, oh, geez, they're going to make me power all
Here
the
we
way
go.
through. All right. So again, I know I was chatting. I won't name names, but I was chatting with somebody on the side here today about being a guest on a future Spec Talk. So if you'd like to come on and share your story and share your knowledge about really anything as it relates to writing specs and SpecLink, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to any one of us about some things that you'd like to chat about. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you to see if it'll be a great fit. I think Alex, Gary, and I are all more than happy to connect on LinkedIn as well. So if anybody wants to reach out and stay in touch that way, we are always open for that. And our next guest is going to be the incomparable Holly Jordan on Wednesday, February 19th. So be sure to use the link that you registered for this one in. You can register for the future one as well. And we hope to see you guys show up on February 13th for our free RIB Unite event, which again, we'll be talking about softwares and technologies and strategies that some of the largest construction companies in the world are using, architecture firms, engineers, to get their jobs done at in a convenient method for them. So again, just want to thank everybody for being here today. And I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen so I can see your beautiful faces again. Where is my window? There's my GoToWebinar. We were chatting with somebody in the comments today about GoToWebinar and how it's like, oh man, it's got its challenges, that GoToWebinar thing. But here we are, guys. Thank you everybody for attending today. Gary, I I owe you one. Maybe I'll take you to out for a lemonade one day or something like that as a big thank you for saving us today.
Always.
Alex, awesome as always, rocking the new headset, looking like $1 million as usual. Thank you everyone for being here, for spending maybe your lunch hour with us. And yeah, we will talk to you guys in a couple of weeks, so February 19th. So hope to see you there.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone. Bye.